First things first, let's take a moment and pause and get used to the concept of a phrase you probably never thought you'd hear. A $66,000 Kia as we drive the 2015 all-new Kia K900, the flagship. Check the text. Now, I think you'll agree with me, I'm seeing a lot of Jag, XJ, and XF in the vehicle's face, and even in its side view and rear three-quarters, which is not a bad benchmark, but kind of an odd one. Overall, the design is not audacious, daring, or cutting any new direction, for sure. I will point out one thing, though. You do get standard LED headlights, which remain pretty exotic if you get one of the V8 cars. Let's get inside. Now, of course, the K900 will be a non-starter if it wasn't basically LCD everywhere. 9-inch screen up here in the center stack, great big 12.3 LCD instrument panel right in front of me. The LCD IP, however, is part of a special VIP package. You don't get that on every single one of these. And something new for Kia, their first HUD, their first head-up display out there, which looks pretty good. It'll give you speed, your next nav direction, as well as blind spot, lane departure indications, things like that. Now let's go to the head unit. First of all, let's start with our media sources. Nothing too surprising here. All the things you want, like satellite radio, HD radio, broadcast radio, USB, aux jack, things of that nature. It's all here, Bluetooth streaming also. It does a pretty good job of bringing you the information about the source you're listening to and doing it in a way that is very digestible. By the way, this is not a touch head unit. It's voice or knob only, but touching the screen will get you nowhere. Oh, note this, when you're on satellite radio, you've got a pause play in this as well, something we saw in GM cars a few years ago. There's no haptic feedback on this controller. It's just click, click, click. There's no handwriting recognition on there like some of the recent Audis. Navigation screen quality is very good. Tight dot pitch, good labeling. Everything is quite readable. Entering destinations is not difficult at all, by all the usual ways that you would do so, and of course, as I mentioned, by voice.
Please say address without state name or say change state.
235 2nd Street, San Francisco.
Line, please.
1. Quick and painless, easy to enter an address via voice, and it seems pretty good about recognizing them. That said, there is no live navigation, search to destination, or open search on here. Apps in this car are nothing to write home about. They include Yelp support and, more importantly, Pandora. But the latter, oddly enough, only on iOS devices and only via a cable. So let's go to the Yuvo services. This is their idea of a connected telematics base. It's not that impressive, though. It's basically OnStar and a little bit of steroids, maybe. You've got roadside assistance, vehicle diagnostics, and repair information. The parking minder is fairly interesting. Let's say I just parked the car. I push this button, and it's now connecting to the Yuvo app that's running on my phone, and it just sent this car's location to the phone. I can also go there and set up a timer to remind me when the parking here runs out. My POIs lets you send POIs from the internet, from Google Maps, let's say, so that they're ready right here in the car. But again, I don't like to maintain two bases of anything. Media, destinations. I've already got all my destinations on my phone, in my cloud services. I don't need to repopulate a set in my car. So this, to me, feels dated already. Now, of course, a car like this has a backup camera and sensors on the bumpers, but notice what we have here also. Because we've got this guy trimmed up all the way, you hear all my sensors going live. You can see that I'm getting graphical indication on this overview map, a surround camera, as well as many other views I can select down here. And they're very easy to get to. This is one of the better layouts and actual expressions of multi-camera surround view out there. Now, the K900 boasts standard heated rear seats with access to HVAC controls, a power sunshade, and some panoramic roof that stretches back there. If you get the VIP package, you also get reclining back seats, cooled rear seats, and a bunch of other niceties. In this case, they're benchmarking the Lexus LS. Blessedly, they don't have any dumb DVD rear seat entertainment system. Standard or optional. I approve. Now, here in the engine bay is where you can clearly realize that Kia understands you enter a category like this of true luxury cars by first establishing your baseline bona fides. This engine is a good example. You start off with big displacement, no trickery. 5-liter V8, no turbo, no supercharger, mounted longitudinally in the engine bay, driving those rear wheels. The numbers are pretty impressive. 420 horsepower, 376 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 happens in a sprightly 5.5 seconds, considering this car weighs over 4,500 pounds before you get in it. And the MPG's not bad at 1523. No all-wheel drive variant is offered yet, though you could see that being perhaps a market necessity down the road. Now, all that power comes back into the car through a single-choice 8-speed automatic transmission with this shifter here that is rather BMW-like. The top 3 gears are overdrive, by the way, so in a sense it's a 5-speed for actual involved driving. You've got 3 drive modes. You've got Eco, Normal, and Sport. And you can tell from the little infographic up here that Eco handles drivetrain, tails it back. Normal is going to put you in your baseline mode. Sport is going to amp up the response of the powertrain, the shift points as well, but also change a little bit of the assist on the electric hydraulic steering rack. None of this, though, affects the suspension. This car does not have an adaptive suspension. Sport mode also puts you into a different gauge cluster up here that I don't find is very interesting. I don't need both a dial indication of my tach as well as a readout of the RPM. It's kind of just silly. Interestingly, even when you're in sport mode, this car doesn't have a real sporty interface on the controls. You do have the ability to shift over here, but this shifter is kind of fiddly in a way. And then there are no paddles on the wheel either. So getting this car in sport mode doesn't get you far down the road to sport. Okay, underway you find out right away this vehicle is aimed at Lexus LS more than anything else. That's my estimation. Because it doesn't have the sharp sort of brawniness, sort of jock in the 3-piece suit kind of DNA that you find in BMWs and Audis fairly often. It's even different than a Mercedes. This is definitely a Lexus LS feel vehicle. For example, the power is substantial. You've got plenty of it. But it's a little bit sleepy. You've got to unbundle a lot of gears, no matter what mode you're in, to get that power to deliver. Once you do, you really want to shift this thing. And as I mentioned, you don't have any paddles. So it's even harder to tap into the goodness of this super silky V8. I mean, this is one of the smoothest riding, most comfortable cars I've driven. There is not a note of imprecision to it, but I want more guts. Sport mode helps, of course, but it's not dramatically different. The ride quality, as I said, is so unbelievably buttery, it's very impressive. On the other hand, it's got a certain amount of this, a certain amount of jounce in it that is not going to please everybody. And a bit of body roll to it that I wasn't really expecting. However, when you dive into a corner on a twisty road, it doesn't plow the front end. They've done a nice job with the front end geometry, so it doesn't have this big sliding, sloppy oversteer. But we are just floating along here. Yeah, it's like riding on a big puffy cloud. Okay, let's price our K900 with the caveat that when you're in this class of car, there is no right answer whether it's worth the money or not, because a lot of what's going on in these kinds of vehicles is image and prestige, and that's a personal call. That said, here are the numbers. $60,400 delivered for a V8 car, which is pretty well loaded. There's only one thing you'll add to the sheet to take it fully CNET style, and that's the VIP package. Here's what it includes. It bumps up a rear camera to include those surround cameras. You get adaptive cruise control to go with the blind spot and lane departure tech. The instrument panel goes from gauges to LCD, as we saw in this car. You also get Kia's first ever head-up display, and you get more seat adjustability as well, including a big bump in the rear seats, which includes the reclining, the power lumbar, the active cooling ventilation to go with the standard heating back there. All in about $66,400. Who knew a Kia would ever go there and do so pretty successfully?